Welcome to today's social system mapping OnRamp Sarah. Your hosts today are me and Kara Martner, who, Kara, if you wave your hand. So I'm the co-founder of Sum Mapping Greater Than the Sum. And Kara is our admin support, our wonderful tech and admin and everything else support, and Christine support. And so if you have technical issues, ping Kara. And she will be keeping an eye on the chat and putting links in the chat for you. This is what did it before when I tried to page down. Okay, so if you're not familiar with our routine, this is the first of our 3 monthly sessions. The first session is always on the second Monday of the month. That's the OnRamp session, which is what we're doing today. During the OnRamp session, this is a really great intro level for people who aren't familiar with social system mapping. What we do in an OnRamp session is we always have a map from someone in the community who's been working on a social system map, and we have them share their map and walk you through it, and then do some questions and answers. So it's a great opportunity to get to see someone else's map. And obviously there's a bunch of people here who have seen lots of maps and have some of their own maps that they've shared previously. So it's also a great way for us to see each other's work and get ideas and inspiration from that. The second session of the month is on the third Monday of every month. And we have on the third Monday is a deeper dive conversation where we dig into some topic that has come up in an OnRamp session. It's for people who are sort of at some level already grappling with social system mapping. So we don't usually go into the fundamentals, but everybody's welcome whether they've got the fundamentals clear in their heads yet or not. And this year we're going to add not just a focused topic kind of session type, but we're going to do a new session type. And so next Monday will be our first sort of an experiment with this, which is Christy, who's here with us, is going to share with us her thinking on a project that she's trying to get started with. And then we'll all sort of listen to what her challenges are and what her questions are, and we'll have a conversation together to sort of do a clinic. So it doesn't have to be a map you haven't started, but anybody who has a map that they would like to share with the community and get the community to sort of help them think about, that will be the map or clinic format of our deep dives. So, and I'm grateful to Christy for offering to go first and excited about that session, which is next Monday. And then the fourth Monday of the month, we have our third session, which is a tech talk session. And this is usually digging deeper into the actual technology of Kumu and SumApp, and often sharing a new feature of SumApp or sharing a feature of SumApp that we think is underutilized and people aren't really aware of as an option. Next Tech Talk in 2 weeks, we are going to talk. We've been editing our, oh, I think I didn't put, oops. Okay. Yipes. Sorry. I got a request to join and then, hang on a second. Oh, Sarah, I closed that document. I'll find it. Usually I give hosting to Kara and she handles the waiting room. And so I think she's got it.
I've still got it, Christine.
Okay. It just pinged me, which it usually doesn't. So then I went to click on the letting him in and close that document that Sarah needed me to open. I said, okay, so we are on the fourth Monday of this month, we've been making edits to, we've been updating the survey language that the SumApp survey is built in so that we can add more functionality to it. And every time Tim and I are testing it, I'm just so excited because there's so many things we'll be able to do with it. I'm like, oh, this is so cool. So I don't think we're going to have it ready yet to launch by the 25th, but we have it in a testing environment. And so so we're going to walk you through some of the cool things about that, just to give you a heads up of what's coming. Okay, so that's sort of our general monthly routine. Everyone is welcome to join at any time, any of these. They're all, oops, I'm in the wrong place. They're all free. If you want to learn more, there's other ways. If you're more of a self-directed learner, there's a few things you can do. One is to be on our social system map, which we have so that people who are new to this whole process can have the experience of being a member in a map and see what the interface looks like. And Kara is probably putting a link to that, to opt into that map in the chat. You can also join our Slack team and ask questions. We're really responsive. And we have a knowledge base that has a whole wealth of articles that you can read and check out. Kara has just posted all of those links in the chat, and they'll also be included in a follow-up email within the next 2 days. So if this isn't a great time to grab those links, don't bother, because you'll get them. And lastly, we also record these sessions, and there's a whole library of the recordings in the knowledge base as well, which there's a link to in the chat. And on top of all of that, as if that weren't enough, I do office hours once a week. It's really just a half hour, but it's on every Thursday Central, 5 to 5:30 p.m. Central time. I just get on Zoom, and whoever shows up, and we just talk about whatever they want to talk about. So I welcome you all to do that. Just if you're stuck thought partnering, even just to say hi. I do cancel sometimes, and if I cancel, it's in the Slack announcements channel. So Slack is helpful if you're planning on showing up to those to keep you up to date. So for today, we're going to do chat intros in a moment. Then we're going to look at Sarah's map. Then we're going to do questions and answers. And we do a optional, so the formal hour is designed to fit, the formal session is designed to fit into an hour and stop at the top of the hour. And then usually, and we'll do this today, I'll stick around and Kara will stick around for an extra half hour. If you have questions or just want to talk or just want to, catch up, whatever it is, we have an optional half-hour session at the end. Not sure if Sarah's going to stick around for that, but she'll tell us when we get there. So you're invited to stay, but we'll pause and do a nice goodbye before so you don't have to feel like, oh, I've got to go, and they're continuing on. And they won't release me. We will release you. Okay, so chat intros. Let me open my chat. Let's have you put into the chat name, pronoun, location, so we can see who's here. I'm going to turn off my notification noises from my phone. And all these friends to me, hopefully having opportunities to become friends to one another. And Anne, I haven't seen you on because I'm in presentation mode. Let me stop sharing. Where are you on the thing? Anne Gomez. I'm not, oh, there you are. Hi, it's great to see you. Okay. And Derek, so many of you, that's great. I'm excited. And from all over the place, which always makes me feel really honored and humbled. Okay, the next, I know I stopped sharing, but the next chat intro is what's one primary network that you're part of or working with? So we can see what each other's grappling with in the chat. Christy, yeah. A new national maternal health, Asian Pacific, yep. So, wow. Wow. I'm kind of floored. So many great initiatives. And I'm just, it's always so, I always feel so honored to be able to help, to be able to support those in any way. Cool. Okay. Thank you all. And then the last one is, what's one network weaving challenge you think or hope that social system mapping might be able to help with? So a network weaving challenge this might help with. Inclusion is such a big one. It's a high goal in my mind, always, for mapping connections. Linking needs and resources. Mapping the blessed unrest. Fellas. Leverage points is a big, yeah. Helping see leverage points and understand, and in my mind, helping understand systems and the leverage points in systems. And yeah, especially the marginalized. That was kind of the trigger for me in the beginning around this mapping, was a vision that this could help with that. Can't say we've got there yet, but it's definitely a goal. Okay. Mapping and recording diversity. Yep. Differences. Yes. Yep. Okay. I'm going to share my screen, I think, and go back now. I think most of you, hopefully it won't crash on me again. I think most of you know this, but I find that I assume that people know this far more than it's actually true, and that we can be having a long conversation and, you know, an hour into it, somebody reveals that they don't, this basic fundamental piece is not clear in their mind. So for those of you who don't know this, the social system mapping environment it is actually comprised of two very totally separate different software programs. So SumApp is the program that my partner and spouse and I have been nurturing and developing for 6 years now. And SumApp is designed to gather data from a social ecosystem or from a network. So here's this is like the survey and the connection question. So this is the data gathering tool that we use to get at the data that we're going to map. That data then gets fed by a live link directly into a totally separate project or platform called Kumu. Kumu is designed to visualize network graph data. So Kumu is great at doing system maps and all kinds of concept maps and network maps and all kinds of analysis, any kind of analysis that uses dots and lines to think about it. But Kumu doesn't give you a way to gather that data for our particular context. So that's why we use the two. Kumu is great. We have no need to like recreate that wheel because it's already really wonderful and it's out there. So we just created this part. So there's two platforms, but for your users, your network members, it feels like one coherent platform, because once you've made your map in Kumu, then we take the embed link from Kumu and stick it back into a tab in SumApp. So then you have your map tab in SumApp, so people can go through their SumApp survey and input their information, and then they can go right to the map tab once you've got that set up and interact with the map in an interactive live way. 95% the same as if it were in Kumu. But they can't break anything, they can't edit anything, and it's just a little more contained. But so for them, it feels like a single experience. So I just wanted, I realized I need to start spelling that out at the beginning of these so people are less confused, or, have the context in their minds as we start. So with all of that done, I'm now gonna hand it over to Sarah Shanahan, who is Miss Wonderful. And has been the director of community management at ReAmp Network for a very long time, and I'll just let her take over from there. So I'm done sharing. So.
Hello, really great to see so many familiar faces in here. And for those of you who I don't know yet, hello. Hopefully we can become friends. So as Christine said, I am director of community management for the ReAmp Network. Our network is a 9-state network here in the upper Midwest. We have over 130 nonprofit organizations. That includes philanthropic organizations as well as advocacy organizations, all working towards our North Star goal, which is to equitably eliminate greenhouse gas emissions in the Midwest by 2050. The motto for our network is to think systemically and act collaboratively. So those practices are really woven into everything that we do together. And that motto is part of what led us to do this mapping work. You know, we were founded on a collaboratively created shared systems analysis to really think about how we're going to make a difference in terms of climate, in terms of energy. And in doing that, it has really uncovered a lot of ahas for us. And so we thought, hey, like, how might we think systemically about ourselves to have some of the same realizations, to have some of the same ahas, to have a deeper collective understanding of who we are and how we're working to achieve this North Star goal. So that's really what led us there. When we talk about our network and, you know, what does it really mean to be a network? Like, what is it that we're doing to help our members achieve this North Star goal? We talk about the 3 C's. We're about connections, we're about collective strategy setting, and we're about capacity building. And those 3 pillars are how I'm going to be structuring my talk today, is really thinking about those 3 C's, right? Like, that's our bread and butter. That's what members are getting out of it. Those are sort of the program areas or the ways that we sort of track and understand how we're doing as a network. And so how does that map relate to those 3 pillars, to those 3 C's? And that's what I'm going to talk about. Part of me wishes that I could do this talk at the end of the year, because we've been in the process of a major upgrade, really actually getting a database, a really robust database for our internal site. And that's really important for us because it has implications for our map. And I'm going to talk about that. I guess I'll just dive in right now. So, you know, when we think about our network, we are a generative social impact network. And really 80% of the work in our network is all about connections. It's all about the relationships, right? It's the foundation for everything that we need to do together. And we have 450 individuals that are part of our network, right? I'd mentioned we had the 130 member organizations. But, you know, in thinking about that, you know, what we realized is, you know, if we're all about making connections, if you went to like our internal site and looked at our member directory, if you were looking for somebody, you'd actually have to know who in particular you were looking for, right? I'd have to be able to search their name. But in a network of 450 people, right, with a lot of diversity, we're going to be looking at people in a different way. And that's because we probably don't know who we want to know yet. So what I'm going to show you here right now is, you know, one of the key questions that we thought about when we started making our map is, you know, what do we just know about people already? And how could we be using that to really seed the information in the map? And for me personally, like, this was generated from a desire to really make it easy for people. As Christine said, SumMap is this tool that collects the data. The reality is, though, too, to some degree, we've already collected a lot of data and information on people. And what I'm showing you here is our registration form. And what it does is it's collecting information about people that we use to produce a profile on the comments. So one major piece of work, this is a piece where we're kind of stuck at right now, is how could we take all of the information that we have already that exists and use that to start to populate our network map. And for us, that's really important because we really want a robust map. We really want to have a robust member directory. And the reality is that when you have a network of 450 people, most people are probably going to be pretty lazy about entering information. So part of what we've done here is we're forcing people, when they register for our site, to complete a profile, which will be displayed on our internal website. But then what we want to do is take that data and use it to start to seed the map so we can start to have this really robust member directory. So one of the questions that we asked ourselves at the beginning of this is just what do we know already about people and how may we start to use that information as a first step for producing this map? And the second piece then too is just how do we always make it easy for people? So that's also like a key question that we really keep in the back of our mind all the time. So I'm going to move over here to a view. And what you're going to see here is just a lot of circles. So we've kept people anonymous because this is a private map. So in all the views that I'm going to show you today, like, you aren't going to see people's faces, which you may see in some other maps. And that's really just to protect, you know, our private map. So this is one of our main views, and really what this is people. So you'll see on most of these Kumu maps that you'll see like circles and you'll see lines. The circles are individuals or usually, and the lines are the relationships between them. So what we've noticed in terms of connections is as we started to use this map, which we use a lot in orienting people to the network and then helping facilitate connections around meetings or events primarily. But what we realized really early on is that when people open up this map during an orientation and I show it, it really gives them a big aha. It's like, oh, that's what the network is. It's people, right? It's a network of people. And that seems so simple, but it's actually a really like kind of profound aha for people. Because one of the big differences I noticed in orientations is before we had the map, as I talked about the network, it was really hard for people to conceptualize what it meant for them or how they may start to like get engaged or get connected. Once I started showing the map, as soon as people saw other people's faces, it was like a light bulb went off and they're like, oh, actually, you know what? I might want to connect with people who are working on utility scale solar because that's what I'm working on. So in this main view, we really see this as that really robust member directory. Again, you don't know who you don't know yet. So in this example, you know, what we're able to do is we're able to filter out individuals and start to zoom in to see who they may want to connect with. So again, like this story happened during an orientation. And what we did was we said, okay, let's look and see who's decarbonizing the power sector. It was still a lot of individuals for us to sort through. So we added a secondary filter, not only who's decarbonizing the power sector, but who's working with businesses or utilities. And what that did was it gave us a much more manageable universe of people. We were able to zoom in together, you know, see people's faces, who do they know, who don't they know, and so who might we get you connected to. So it's been a really powerful tool, I think, in having this very unique member directory, being able to find people and connect in ways that we would not have been able to do otherwise. So this is first and foremost, I think, one of the core uses for the map that we do this with. And so, okay, that's all I'm probably going to say about that. The other thing that it does then too is I'm going to go into our second view here then. So here we're going to see a little bit more of the relationships, right? So I'd mentioned before we have the circles and we have the lines. In terms of making this user friendly, one of the things that we've learned is showing people this view off the bat is kind of, it's a little bit overwhelming, right? It's like, whoa, like that's a little bit too much information. And so that's why in that first view I showed, you know, that's sort of like the base, the first step for people to really enter into the map and to start to find those connections. But in terms of using the map in this way, I think those of us on staff appreciate the view with the relationships a little bit more. And that's because, you know, as staff, we're really practicing net weaving all the time. So in terms of thinking about forging connections and building relationships in the network, one of the practices that we have is looking to see who is at the edge of our map and how do we bring them closer to the center. I guess one of the things I didn't mention is that as you're looking at these views, people, the circles who become more centrally located, those are the folks who are better connected. They're more connected to the network than anyone else. Part of that may be true just because they are actually more connected. Part of it may be because that's just the best data that we have. But in either case, again, like this is helping us understand the network in a brand new way. And a lot of our practice on staff then, like I said, is to look at the people on the edge and find ways to bring them into the fold in a much deeper and more concentrated way. That's important, one, for network building, right? Getting people to fly to the center. It's also important because these people on the edge most likely have a lot more difference than the people in the center. And in a network, especially a network who cares about being a generative social impact network like ours, it's that difference that's really the source of innovation for our network. So it's actually really important practice for us to know who is on the periphery and how do we tap into their new ways of thinking, their new ways of seeing, helping us improve our overall understanding of the network and the change that we're trying to make in the world around us. So as staff, that's one of the main ways that we have been using this map too. I'm going to go in here to the next view, and I'm going to give it a minute here just because I know my connection can be a little bit slow. Oh, I guess one of the other things I should have said about this, I'm going to go back here for a second. One of the other things I want to say in terms of network building then too is, I talked a little bit here about that first C, the connections. This is the second C is our collective strategy setting. So, we know for us, we believe that by including a diversity of perspectives and people, we're going to have more impactful strategies. So again, using this map, using this data to know who's at the edge, but then we can also go back to these filters as staff and be sorting them out. So, we were hosting a summit, and we knew by looking at the attendee list that we didn't have enough people who had the perspective of rural communities. So we were able to go into this map. We were able to filter just on people who were focused on the rural communities. And again, to some degree, we can see who's already really centered in the network. We can see who's at the periphery. And it allowed us to be more intentional about who we're reaching out to, who we're recruiting to bring into some of these small group meetings where people are coming together to set collective strategy, where we know we need a diversity of perspectives to be included. I think this is actually really important for people who are newer to the network. Your seasoned network members are going to have no problem stepping in and out of the network space. But for new people, it's kind of overwhelming, right? It's kind of intimidating. And having that personal outreach, having that personal invitation really invites people in, really makes them feel welcome and included, and that they belong there. And that's really important for our network personally. Another way that we have used it in terms of thinking about collective strategy is we've done a view on that we've clustered on expertise. Because sometimes in terms of diversity, we aren't just looking in terms of what perspective they're bringing in. We're also maybe looking at their type of skill set. In some cases, we've used this consultant and facilitator one. What you see here too is you see solid lines and dotted lines. And the solid lines tells us who has that expertise to give. And the dotted lines tells us who has that expertise that they're looking for. And that helps us facilitate connections too. So a couple of years ago, what we did was we said, hey, what we've been hearing from members is that they need some more support for building some capacity around facilitation. So we used this by looking at the solid lines. We were able to identify key people to partner with to host this meeting. And then we were able to come back here and see who was interested in building this expertise. We were able to recruit them. So it really helped us be a lot more strategic. And then as a network, thinking about how are we delivering programs and services in a way that people need it most? What is it that they want? How are we giving it to them? And how are we not really bugging people who aren't really looking for this? So again, it really just helped us be a lot more strategic about that. The other thing that, we do with this map too is we're always sort of reflecting. So I think this is mostly for us as staff, I think, and leadership is really thinking about key questions. What is it that we believe we are doing? If we are designing programs and services, are they having the intended impact or are they not? And we did a staff retreat where we worked with Christine to come in and help guide us in thinking about what it is that we might want to know about the network, or what do we believe that we're doing, and is that actually being lived out? Is there a way for us to tell that? And one of our staff works with one of our programs, which we call state tables. And really it's networks at the state level, where again, one of their core functions is about building relationships. And so it got us wondering, are people who are engaged in these state tables, what is their relationship to the network as a whole, right? Are they more engaged? Are they less engaged? We tend to believe that they're more engaged, but is that actually true? And Christine, maybe I should stop sharing and turn it over to you, because I know that you worked with Sean on this key question to sort of think about what it meant and is it actually true, and how might we use the map to know if that's true or not.
Okay. So just full disclosure, I just found out just before that I was going to do this part, so I'm still sort of orienting myself. We did this about a year ago. And so the views and the questions are not super fresh in my mind, but I'm pulling up my stuff. So yes, Sean had state tables and he had I'm sorry, Sarah, did you already say? I'll just repeat.
Good.
See, this is what happens to me. This is why I get anxious. So Sean basically had this this question, which is how much, so the state tables, there are people, you know, each state table has different members, and Sean's idea was that he thinks that there's more cross-pollination going on if you're part of a state table than if you're not. So he's trying to make the case or tell the story that state tables help you be more connected, and that connectivity, well, he starts with just more connectedness. So we're looking at this map, and I say, I don't know the answer to that. I can't tell you. I don't have a view that shows that. So, but I said, well, let me just go back and think about it, and Tim and I'll look at the map and we'll see if we can come up with something. So first we come up with this view, which is showing the state tables. So like if you hover over Wisconsin, you can see the structure of the network in relation to the state table. So you can see that there's a number of people who are pretty central to the network. And if you go to North Dakota, you can see that the state table has fewer people on the state table, and they're less connected to the network. So we get this view set up, and I ping Sean and I say, hey, let's look at this. And so we're walking him through the view, and he's looking at it and he's thinking really hard. And then he says, you know, I have to find out what he says. Maybe, no, we've already got that. Well, so then, not telling the story very well, but he's got another. So we've asked a question. We've showed him what we can see from that in the map, and that triggers him to think more deeply. And then he says, okay, actually what I think I'm getting at is if they're more connected, I think I have this assumption that if they're more connected, that means that they're going to be getting more expertise faster. They're going to have more knowledge. And frankly, I'm sorry, Sarah. I know this is supposed to be quick and easy.
That's fine.
I don't remember how this view tells us that, but so Sean gives us a question. We say, gee, I don't know how to answer that. And I go back and think, and we think, and then I go, oh, hey, maybe if we put the data on the map in this way. So we try to scatter plot, and what this scatter plot here tells us is that these are people who are on state tables, which is a smaller population than the whole. And these gray are people who are not on state tables. And as you can see, so I think this is the connectivity question, there's more density down here. That's not telling me what I'm thinking of. It's telling me. We go to North Dakota. Anyway, so we played. We came up with an answer. We shared it with Sean a second time. And after that conversation, we got even deeper into his question, and we didn't know how to answer it. And but we went back, and then in the middle of the night, I had this light bulb moment when I went, aha, I know how to visualize that. And we came back and we did another, we played some more. And frankly, it was so long ago, I can't tell you how this tells us the answer, but the answer to Sean was yes. Now he has a way of actually showing in a visual way that this assumption that he's making, which he's always told as an anecdote, is actually verifiable with the data that we've gathered so far. We haven't, you know, it's not perfect data, et cetera, but it actually helped him tell his story. And so these are all special views for Sean in Sarah's map or in the ReAmp map. And we just made a document for Sean where we spelled out what each one is telling, and we put a link to the embed so that he could use that when he's meeting with somebody and he wants to tell them the story. He can just sort of march through and show that what he's believes actually is verifiable. And so that helps him tell that story. Sorry, I didn't have more specific.
No, that was perfect.
Okay.
That was perfect, Christine. Thank you. And in fact, it touches on a point that I wanted to make as well in terms of like using this map. What I've talked about so far is a lot about like what it means for us internally. But what we've also come to understand is that this can actually be a really powerful tool for us to tell that story that we want to tell about ourselves, right? Connections are 80% of the work in the network. How do we legitimately go tell funders or a grant report that, hey, we're actually increasing connections in the network? Well, guess what? We are actually able to tell some of that story now because of this map. One of the things that we also did with Christine and Tim was that we looked at, I said we use this around our meeting times. So we compared 2 years of our annual meetings to look, what was the change in connections between 2018 and 2019? And we were able to tell a story about how we increased connections in terms of the overall number and how we deepen them, right? Because we have these connection questions that tell us sort of the levels of relationship that exist in the network. I think there's more for us to do around that, but that's one way that we're actually able to start to tell these stories. And again, just as Christine shared, this story with Sean's assumption about one of the programs that we're running. Is it having a desired impact? And again, without the map, we would not be able to do this otherwise. The last thing I want to talk about then here too, just briefly is, I mentioned that we're about capacity building in our network. So I told you one story already about how we had this facilitator training. We wanted to increase some capacity around that. But another way that we're able to view this is what you're looking at right now is a showcase view. And what this allows us to do is, unlike all the other views I've showed you, where we're really just looking sort of at a filtered segment of the network, what we're able to do is we're able to pop out a characteristic and see how it lives within the network as a whole. It might be kind of hard to see, but in the background, you can see the full network, all the little gray dots, as well as the ones that are popped out. And what's popped out right now is this decarbonizing the power sector. So when we went into this view and looked at this, for us, we were not surprised by what we saw here. We have a lot of people working on decarbonizing the power sector. Again, a lot of them are centrally located. There's a lot of connections and relationships. It seems like overall, we're doing a really good job in terms of connectivity, probably collective strategy setting on this particular topic. When we compared that, and I'll give this a second, to changing transportation options, holy cow, what a difference, right? Far fewer people working on this, far fewer connections, and so what? Well, what that caused us to do was it caused us to reflect on what do we need to do in terms of building capacity in our network for this area of work. Transportation is 30% of the emissions in this country. And since then, we have launched a transportation hub. Our steering committee has made transportation one of our 6 network priorities. And we're starting to think about strategic recruitment. How can we recruit more people who have this expertise in our network as well? So ideally, at the end of the day, we have more relationships and a network that looks more like the power sector in the area of transportation as well. And again, we had a sense in the map that, yeah, we knew we were weak on transportation, but seeing it was like, oh, wow, we really need to do something about this. It really kind of lit a fire under us about it. I think in terms of capacity building too, we do have some dreams for the future. Again, I talked about how we've, used this as a recruitment tool, sort of how it's reflected on a whole in terms of programs and services. But a couple of things that we do have a desire to do is, we really do want to start to understand resource flows in our network, right? If we care about equitably eliminating greenhouse gas emissions, where's the money going? Where's the in-kind services going? And who is it going to? And so that's something that we're starting to think about. We're thinking about how to collect that data so that we can populate it into the map and we can start to play around with different ways of seeing that information. So again, we can really, so our steering committee especially, or our funding committees can really look at that, understand that, and help inform some of the decisions that they're making. So I would just want to wrap up with some maybe key questions that, I have had as I've come about this, and maybe they'll help you think about, the ways that you're doing your map as well. Maybe this will lead into some conversation too. But, one of the core questions that I have always asked myself is, how do people in my network want to connect? What are the most likely ways that people want to connect with each other? For us, I think it's around work or some of those issue areas. It's about skills, right? Like, do you have a skill that I need? And for us personally, we really push it around meeting times and events. Your answers may be differently, but I think asking that question, just how do I believe, how do people want to connect in the network? That's going to help inform how you build your map or what questions you're going to ask. I think another thing too is, what does diversity mean for me? And what does diversity and inclusion mean for me? I think there are lots of ways that people have been using the map in that way. Again, I've talked about a couple of ways that we're starting to think about it. but I think asking your question about like that diversity and what it means is going to be really important. I think asking yourself about how easy is this for the end user is also a really important one. I think that really helps inform some of the views that you're going to make in the map. As I said, for us, one of the things that we learned was that, you know, having that first view with people and relationships was a bit overwhelming. And that caused us to think, okay, well, so what might we do differently to really help invite people to step into that? I think too, another key question is just thinking about the ways that people interact. How do our members interact with it? Okay. How does staff interact with it? How is leadership going to be interacting? Like thinking about those audiences, like who they are, what they might want to be understanding, what may be some of the key assumptions or questions that they're holding. That's really going to help inform the data and information that you're going to connect and how you would build views in the map. And then, you know, I think too, the last one is just thinking about, for me personally, again, I'm always thinking about how to make this easy for people is, you know, what do I know already about people that I might be able to sort of like seed the map with? And so people don't have to go through and duplicate information because they're going to get tired of that real quick. So just thinking about like, what do I know already? You know, how do I be, you know, collaborative, I guess, with the map and not duplicative? I think that's also a really important question. And then, you know, this is something that I have not answered personally. You saw our map. Our map was really based on individuals. But when I talked about who ReAmp is, our membership is organizations. And so what is the relationship between people and organizations? What's same between the information we would want to know or understand about them? What's different? Why would I want to map one over the other? You know, again, for us, we've landed mostly on individuals. That's not necessarily like the correct answer because I don't think there's a correct answer in any of this. It's just sort of what works for you, what do you need, and how is this sort of serving your purposes? So I know that was brief. I know that was quick. I could have talked a lot more, but hopefully that gave you enough to whet your appetite, maybe get your brain turning here a little bit. And I'm happy to open it up for questions or discussions or comments that people may have.
Thank you, Sarah. That was great. You always manage to cram a whole lot in a way that's still comprehensible and doesn't feel sped up, which is great. So thanks. So anybody just questions, feel free to, if you're more comfortable putting them in the chat, do that, or just sort of unmute and let's just do popcorn style, whatever questions you have.
Well, so Sarah, I'm really curious about how you utilize this tool for onboarding. Like when I worked on Bernie's campaign, what really fueled that was the beautiful process they had for linking you with what you're comfortable doing with what needs done from the get-go. It was very clear. You had a palette to choose from. So as you think about collective strategy, if you want to work on this part, or if you have a particular skill, I'm just curious how you've thought about it through the onboarding lens.
Yeah, so when I do an orientation, the first piece of information they get is I'm really talking about the network, grounding them in the network and what are the opportunities for them to collaborate with others. And like I said, you know, normally if I asked, like told people that story and then said, hey, so how do you want to like collaborate? They'd be like, I don't know, I'll get back to you. But again, once they see the map, that's where their brain starts turning. And I often ask them, like, what are they working on that they're excited about? And that sort of opens up their mind. And then again, we can use the map to start to look at like, how might we start getting you connected early on then? So the story I shared about like who's working on utility scale solar, like that happened during an orientation by showing the map. And that's what I've started to see is that people are like, oh yeah, okay, now that I see all these faces, actually, you know, I'm leading a youth fellowship program. Who else in the network works with youth? Cool. You know, we can start to like, again, zoom in to see who fits that characteristic. And then based on who they know or don't know, we're starting to make those connections for them. You know, obviously those connections happen outside the map, but it's the map that sort of inspires them to want to get connected.
Thanks.
So Sarah, there's a question from David. David, do you want to ask it yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thanks very much. Great, Sarah, and that's fantastic. Two things. First of all, what really motivates people to complete a profile? because in my experience that can be quite difficult, perhaps less so where you've got a well-established network like yourself, so they feel, you know, part of something already. And secondly, how much self-organizing do you think takes place? I can see the great value for organizing around events and so on and so forth, but do people use the map to spot other people, actually connect, communicate, or not?
Yeah. So, you know, in my mind, wanting people to use the map to self-organize is an audacious goal. Just like our North Star goal is to equitably eliminate greenhouse gas emissions, right? Like, yeah, that's the dream, that's the vision. And the reality is that there's a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes that's very piecemeal and is sort of working up to that. So especially for us right now, you know, the vision, the goal is that we want people to use it to self-organize. The reality is that today it really does rely a lot on network weaving. And we're always thinking about those steps in between to really get to that vision, right, where people want to use it for self-organizing. Some of the ways that we're doing that leads to your first question about, like, how do you get profile information on people? We're forcing it. So I showed you that registration form at the very beginning. If you want to get connected to ReAmp and you want an account, you have to fill out that profile information. You are required to. And that's the step that we're really looking at right now, is like, how do we then take all that required information that we've collected already, which, by the way, we've designed those profiles to mirror what we want to see on the map. So we can just export and import it, so that really what they're doing is maybe making some tweaks if they're updating information and just telling us about connections. That's one way that we're making it easy. The other thing that we're striving to do too is really trying to integrate our online collaborative platform and the map. So one of the other steps that we are working towards right now is that in your profile, you have all that biographical information that you shared with us. And what we're going to do is, once we have the data ready, is we're going to embed your unique link into your profile. So if you ever want to find your profile or find the map on the website, you can go right to your profile, you can click on your link. You're not going to have to dig through your inbox anymore to go find that email that I sent to you 6 months ago. And we're hoping that those are going to be some small steps that we're taking to, again, like, work on that ladder towards that vision, that it's easy for people to find it, easy for people to use it, and they start self-organizing with it.
Other questions? Anyone? Keep going. Go ahead.
I want to know how many questions you had on the seat.
Good question. You know, let's just do a quick screen share here. Are you talking about connection questions or the profile questions?
Yeah, the profile, the first things we can get on the map.
The profile questions? Yeah, so for us, we asked people about, like, you know, their name and stuff like that. We do ask them to give a short bio. We would have information about what organization they're with. We ask about their ethnicity, although this is another area where I think we have a lot of work to do. We haven't really figured out how to use this question in a way that's A, helpful, and B, you know, sort of protects people's identity. But we are asking it because we know we're going to want, we do use this in some way internally, but externally we got to figure that out. We ask about what areas of work they're doing in terms of equitably eliminating greenhouse gas emissions, the scale of their work, because that's also something we found useful. We ask them about their expertise and then what communities they're working in. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, probably 6 questions. The other data that we do input into the map too is when they attend meetings. And that's something that we generally like load manually, is, you know, if you registered for the annual meeting, we're going to load all that. So it's so people can filter it in the connections tab, because they're most likely going to be able to connect around a meeting. Or for us, we think it's mostly the state level. So those are the 2 survey filters we have when you come to the connection sheets, and that's why.
Sarah, there's a really good question from Isabel in the chat. Isabel, do you want to say it out loud? Do you want me to read it? Bye, Adrian.
Sure. Sorry, it took me a little while to unmute myself. I'm wondering how you might visualize the flow of funding as you mentioned it earlier. I thought that was super interesting.
Yeah, this is only something we've begun to really think about, but we think it's important to do. So one idea that we have is, we may do a clustered view, and we may have one of those like clustered questions be around different funding pots or maybe in-kind services. So maybe our action fund, maybe it's coming from the steering committee, maybe they got travel assistance for a meeting, or maybe they've requested some re-amp in-kind services that we're giving them. But to be able to have those and then cluster the views to see who individually was able to get them. I think for us internally, I don't think this would be a view that's public to members, but for staff and steering committee, I think we'd also want to then overlay that question about ethnicity to really see, again, who's actually getting the money. We care about equitably eliminating greenhouse gas emissions. Are people of color getting the resources, or is it still continuing to go to predominantly white people? That's one idea that we have, but it's a question that we're raising, and we know we got to figure out yet. And like Christine shared earlier, I imagine what's going to happen is it's going to be a lot of trial and error. We're going to try a few things and be like, okay, well, here's how we tweak it. Oh, actually, no, maybe this is the way that we want to do it. So I imagine it's going to be a learning process for us.
I'm really glad you asked that, Isabel, because that just made me realize, that we could do a whole deep dive of just brainstorming together about possibilities, because that's something that a number of people I'm in contact with we've sort of alluded to getting to someday. We'd love to be able to do that, but none of us have actually dug in and started to do that experiment. So I'm going to schedule a deep dive on that topic. So thanks for triggering that idea.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So let's hey, Sarah, are you going to stick around for the last half hour, for the after half?
Yep.
Yes. Okay, great. So let's do this. Let's let's do a really quick reflection in the chat, which is one thing that you're taking just one thing that you're taking away from this conversation today. And so go ahead and put those in the chat. And then those of you who need to hop off, we'll say goodbye. And then if you want to stick around and talk to Sarah some more, just don't hop off when we say goodbye. But for now, yeah. One thing you're taking away from this. Clarity about the filters. Yeah. Yeah, principles and values is a big thing. Yep, each audience. Yeah, it's great. Yeah. Okay, since I'm seeing people pop off, if you're going to pop off and you've already written, I'm going to pause here. And so if those, we like to do everybody unmute and say goodbye rather than just let everybody disappear and not be acknowledged for their time. So if we all unmute, I'll count down. And then if you need to pop off right now, that's your welcome, love you for the day. And then if you're sticking around and you still need to put your takeaway in there, that's great. So is everybody unmuted? And so let's just go, Nadia. So so counting down, 3, 2, 1, whatever it is. Thanks
Thank you so much for coming back and
Thank
joining.
you.
Wonderful day or
thank
evening.
you.
Wonderful.
Love you all. Thanks. Bye-bye.